Hi guys, welcome back to Fairies Tutorials. In today's episode, we'll be looking at food, nutrition, and health, and we'll be exploring the topic minerals. We'll look at their classification, functions, sources, and also their deficiencies. Food, nutrition, and health. We're looking at section 2, which is entitled Nutrition and Health. We're still at content 6, which has to do with minerals. Now, let us take a look at our focus points. So we'll be looking at a definition of a particular key concept. We'll be looking at the classification of minerals, sources, functions of minerals, and also the health effects of improper intake of minerals. Now, let's kick things off with setting our foundation, right? And we're defining our key concept. And our key concept is minerals. Now, what do you think are minerals? Or what do you already know about minerals? All right, let us find out what the definition is. Now, minerals are essential inorganic compounds required in small amounts, and it is required for growth, maintenance, reproduction, and lactation. Now, on the contrast, vitamins that we looked at previously are organic compounds, right? Now, minerals are inorganic compounds, and they're required also, like vitamins, in small amounts in the body, which makes them micronutrients. Good. Now they're required for growth, maintenance of the body, reproduction, and also in lactation. Good. Now let us look at the classification of minerals. How are minerals classified? Do you know how minerals are classified? Let us look if what you were thinking about is correct, right? Now, classification of minerals. We have two categories. We have macro minerals and micro minerals, or we may say trace minerals, right? Now, similarly with the concept of macronutrients and micronutrients, the macronutrients are what? Remind me of them. Proteins, carbohydrates, and fats or lipids, whereas the micronutrients are vitamins and minerals. Now, when it comes on to the classification of minerals, we have two types, which are macro minerals, which are needed in the body in large amounts, and micro minerals, which are needed in the body in small amount, right? So macro mean large, micro mean small, right? Now, you may also find that you may see trace minerals. It is the same thing as micro minerals. Good. Now, your task is to take a look at these scrambled words and let us see if you can figure out which minerals fall under the macro mineral category. All right, can you identify any so far? All right, it's now time for the reveal. So the macro minerals are magnesium, calcium, phosphorus, chlorine, potassium, and also sodium. Now, were your suggestions or your guess right? Good job. So the macro minerals are magnesium, calcium, phosphorus, chlorine, potassium, and sodium. Now let us look at the micro minerals and let us see if you can discover what they are as well. All right, there we go with the scrambled words. Now let's discover what these micro minerals are. So we have sulfur, selenium, iron. Now, even though we have iron listed here as a macro mineral or a trace mineral, it is needed in higher quantity than the trace or macro minerals that are listed here. All right, there is also zinc, fluorine, and finally iodine, right? Or we may say iodine. Good. So the microminerals are sulfur, selenium, iron, zinc, fluorine, and iodine. Good. Now let us look at these macrominerals, their sources, and also their main functions, right? So I want you to take note of the plant source and also the animal source, right? As well as their functions. Now, let us kick things off with calcium. Now, good sources of calcium includes milk and milk products, dark green leafy vegetables, tofu, and also legumes. Their functions: calcium helps to build and maintain bones and teeth, nerve and muscle function, and also aid in blood clotting, right? Very important. So we have about 3 functions of calcium there. 1, it helps to build and maintain bones and teeth. 2, it helps in nerves and muscle function, and also it aids in blood clotting. Now, let us look at phosphorus. Good sources are meat, eggs, poultry, fish, legumes, milk, and also milk products. And you may take note that the good sources of calcium are also similar to those of phosphorus, right? Now, the main functions are it helps to build and maintain bones and teeth, as well as like for calcium, and it also aids in energy metabolism. Now, our next macromineral is magnesium, right? And good sources includes leafy green vegetables, legumes and nuts, and also whole grain foods. Now, let us look at the function. Now, magnesium helps to build bones and protein. It aids in energy metabolism, and also it helps in muscle contraction. Our next macromineral is sodium, right? Good sources include table salt, processed food, and also soy sauce. The function of sodium is that it helps to maintain water balance and also nerve function. Next mineral is chlorine. Good sources includes table salt, soy sauce, and also processed foods. It helps also to maintain water balance, and it aids in digestion. And our final macromineral is potassium. Good sources of potassium includes vegetables, fruits, meat, poultry, and fish. Now, let us take a look at the functions of potassium. So it helps to maintain water balance, just like chlorine and sodium, right? It helps to make protein like magnesium, and it also aids in functioning of the heart and the nervous system. Good. Now, those are the sources and also the functions of the macrominerals, right? And we have 6 macrominerals. They are calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, sodium, chlorine, and potassium. Now, guys, let's turn the page to look at microminerals. Now, there are also 6 microminerals. They are sulfur, iodine, selenium, iron, zinc, and also fluorine. Now, let us take a look at sulfur good sources, right? So there is milk and milk products, meat, poultry, fish, legumes, and nuts. Now, the main function of sulfur is that it forms part of some amino acids and some B vitamins. Now, let us look at iodine. So, good sources of iodine includes seafood and also iodized salt. So, when we speak of seafood, you know that we're talking about shellfish, right? And we may also be talking about seaweed as well. Now, what iodine does, it helps in metabolism as part of thyroid hormone. right? Now, the next macromineral is selenium. Good sources include seafoods, meat, and also organ meat such as liver or kidney, right? And what selenium does is to help break down harmful substances. Our next macromineral or trace mineral is iron. Very important in our bodies, right? So iron, good sources are red meat, seafood, legumes, green leafy vegetables, fortified cereals, and fortified cereals, which meaning when something is fortified, it means that it wasn't in the particular product originally, right? And after processing, these nutrients are added, right? So we may have fortified with iron, fortified with vitamin D or vitamin A, right? Also, another important source of iron is dried fruits. Now, let us look at the functions of iron, right? So, iron is a part of the red blood cells and it also helps in energy metabolism. Now, let us look at zinc. Good sources of zinc include meats, poultry, seafood, milk, whole grain foods. Now, let us look at the main functions. It is part of many substances that help carry out the body's processes. And the last macromineral or trace mineral is fluorine. Now, good sources include fish or fluorinated water. And what fluorine does is to help what? Form strong teeth and bones. So you will notice that most minerals are common in certain types of foods, right? Such as the legumes and nuts, such as poultry, milk, and also milk products. All right. Now, let us take a look at the sources of iron, right? So we have two categories as it relates to the sources of iron. There is heme and non-heme sources. Now, heme sources of iron are from the animal source, whereas the non-heme sources of iron are found from the plant source of food, right? Now, as it relates to heme iron sources, these sources are from animal sources and they absorb more into our bodies, right? Now we speak of organ meat, lean lamb, mutton, beef, pork, fish, poultry, game, and also shellfish, right? So those are examples of heme iron sources and they're from the animal produce or from the animal group, right? Food from animals, right? They're considered as heme iron sources and they are readily absorbed into our bodies. Now, as it relates to non-heme iron sources, they are from the plant sources. Good. Now, these plant sources that are rich in iron includes nuts, raisins, beans, green leafy vegetables, and also chocolate. Now, the difference between these sources, we can look at many differences. One of the difference is the source in which these products come from. So the heme iron source comes from animals, non-heme iron source come from plants, right? Another thing to look at is that heme iron sources absorb readily into our bodies, whereas the non-heme iron sources doesn't readily absorb, right? So it is a must all the time that we have to consume vitamin C along with these non-heme iron sources so that they are better able to absorb into our bodies, as well as it will boost the absorption for the heme sources of iron as well. Now, let us look at a summary of the iron sources found in food, right? As we said before, we have heme iron, and these are found in food in animal products. Example, red meat, liver, poultry, and eggs. There's also the non-heme iron source, and these are found in food in plant sources. Example, beans, nuts, seeds, dried fruits, fortified breads, and cereals. Now we're at a checkpoint. Now, how are minerals classified? How are minerals classified? Next, list 3 micromineral and 3 macromineral. Give 2 sources of each mineral listed above. So you should be able to give 2 sources of microminerals, 2 sources of macrominerals, and also to identify the types of minerals. Now, you should be able to list 3 functions of calcium in the diet and also identify 3 non-heme sources of iron in the diet. Now, let us move on to the health conditions associated with improper intake of minerals. Good? Now, the first condition we're looking at is, or conditions that we're looking at are rickets and also osteoporosis. And we'll be going through the signs and the symptoms. Now, as you can see on your screen here, calcium and phosphorus are 2 important minerals that helps to prevent these type of bone diseases. So it is very important for us to have adequate intake, right? Now, there is rickets that happens to children, and there's also osteoporosis that mostly affects the elderly. Now, let us look at some of the signs and symptoms of someone who has, of a child who has rickets or who is affected by rickets, right? Now, as you can see, there may be spine deformalities. There may also be a short stature, right? Odd-shaped ribs, pelvic deformities, wide knee joints and also wide ankle joints, a bow leg, right? And also wide wrist, wide elbow, pigeon chest, and an odd shaped skull, right? So that is a child who is affected by the rickets, right? And rickets is caused by an inadequate intake of calcium and phosphorus as it relates to minerals, right? If we were thinking of a vitamin, we could throw vitamin D in it, right? But we're looking about the inadequate intake of minerals. All right, now let us look at the signs and symptoms of someone who has osteoporosis, right? Now, bone pain or tender. So the bone may be painful or may feel a little tender. Fractures with little or no trauma, right? So these persons who are suffering from osteoporosis, this is when the bones become brittle, right? The bone is not as strong enough. So even if they don't have a trauma, they may fracture easily. The hand or probably bounce somewhere, or they bounce their body somewhere, and they have a fracture or a broken bone, right? So it is very important for us to understand the importance of these minerals so we can prevent these illnesses from happening to ourselves and also our family members, right? Now, loss of height over time. So because the bones are getting softer, then persons become just as with the child with the rickets that has a short stature. Likewise, it's the same for someone who has osteoporosis, right? Now, there may be neck or low back pain, right, due to fractures, and also a stooped posture. There's also another condition called osteomalacia, which is similarly to what the child who has rickets would experience, but osteomalacia often affects adults. Good. Now, let us look at another health condition, and we're looking at anemia, right? And specifically, we're looking at iron deficiency anemia. There's also pernicious anemia. Pernicious anemia is caused by a lack of vitamin B12 as well. Remember, there are different types of anemia, but as it relates to the insufficient intake of minerals, we're looking at iron deficiency anemia. Now, let us go through some of these signs and symptoms that are being displayed on your screen, right? So fatigue, dizziness, and most times persons may also faint, right? Now, low blood pressure, as it relates to the heart, it is affected in the following ways. So there may be palpitations. So when we speak of palpitation, we're speaking about the rapid beat, heart rate, or the rapid beat of the heart. Or the same thing that persons may say, if you ever hear this phrase, my heart a flutter, right? So person's heart may be fluttering. Good. Now, there's also chest pain, angina, or heart attack. Two may result of may become a result of someone having anemia or being anemic. Good. Now, as it relates to the spleen, it is enlarged. The colon changes color. There is muscular weakness. There is respiratory issues. Persons will have shortness of breath. As it relates to their skin, it is pale, they get cold easily, and the skin also starts to yellow. Likewise with the eyes, right? So it is very important for us to understand the effects of improper intake of these minerals, and also to have include adequate amount in our diet to prevent deficiency diseases. All right. Now, next we're moving on to goiter. Now, do you remember which, as you can see in the diagram here, the thyroid gland is being affected, right? And earlier on, when we were looking at the different types of minerals, we also looked at a particular mineral that aids in the proper health of our thyroid gland. Do you remember which mineral that is? It starts with an I, and no, it's not iron. Awesome, it's iodine, right? Now, let us look at the signs and symptoms, right? So there may be a visible swelling at the base of the neck, a tight feeling in the throat, coughing, hoarseness, difficulty swallowing, and also difficulty breathing, right? Now we're at our checkpoint. What's the difference between rickets and osteoporosis? A deficiency of the mineral iodine can cause which health condition? Differentiate between the two types of anemia highlighted. You're awesome. You've made it to the end of the video. Please remember to like, subscribe, and also share with persons who you know will find this information useful. Thank you for making it Fairy's Tutorials.